One of the stories of Jesus that we love to tell our children comes from Luke 17. Jesus is headed from Galilee down to Jerusalem, and he comes to a city, and 10 lepers say, "Oh, please heal us." And he says, "Go to the priest." They head towards the priest, and they are healed on the way to the priest. One of them comes back to say thank you. And Jesus says, "Well, where are the other 9? And we love to tell that story to tell people you should say thank you. Maybe we need to think about turning that story inward a little bit as well and say thank you. In the 40 years or so of work I've had with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I've learned a bunch of things about saying thank you, and I've had some experiences with that. I'd like to share a few of them with you, primarily from church settings. One of those things we should do more often is thank our donors. Now, we may think of the people paying tithe and giving offerings without the term donor, but they actually are donors. When somebody gives money, we should send them a thank you letter. Now, maybe not every week to every person, but every so often, a letter sent personally addressed to the people who have been financially supporting the church or the institution or the ministry you're part of. Be involved in that thank you letter. And one specific thing with it, if you can write some kind of specific note, some kind of handwritten note on every one of those letters, it's going to go a long ways. Now, there's other times when a phone call or even a personal visit would be helpful. I remember someone who gave $30,000 to our church. It was the biggest donation we'd ever had. I went to visit that person and said 2 or 3 things. One of them was, "Thank you very much." But another one was, "What prompted the gift?" And another one was, "Is there anything special you'd like to use it for?" I've learned that many times people who give larger amounts of money like to know what project it's going to, or like to be able to help in designating that. I had one person at a church who loved to help us out with special needs, but he kind of wanted me to call him and say, "Here's the need. Now, would you help us out with this?" And he often would be very generous with our church, but he liked that personal connection and personal contact. It's a way of saying thank you by saying, "We need your gift." Often the thanks is in the acceptance of the gift for a true and genuine need as much as it is something else. It's also possible to say thank you to donors in a large group setting. So, for example, maybe it's from the pulpit. You're in a sermon and you get a chance to thank the congregation for being generous. Or maybe you work at a project that the church can have, and you start this project and say, "We need $5,000, or we need $45,000, or maybe we need $450,000. Whatever that amount is, when you reach that goal, be effusive with your praise to the congregation from in front of the entire congregation. There's another thing too we don't always think about, but that is the church bulletin. How often do we say thank you in the church bulletin to the donors who have made our church's ministry and mission possible? Often a church will put in, "Here's the church budget we needed to raise to date, and here's how much we've raised to date," and almost always that includes, "Here's how much we are behind." That's almost like saying, "Why don't you give more?" Instead, let's say thank you for what has been given, and give the church this sense of the joy there is in bringing those gifts to Jesus. I also want to give you one other thought, because you see, not everybody is giving just money. We need to realize and remember that we need to thank people for their gifts of time and talent, as well as their gifts of treasure in this broad stewardship sense. So I've been part of a church where we've had a banquet to thank the local church leaders. We didn't try to teach them new skills. We didn't ask them to do anything. We just said, "Thank you. You've made our church a better place." We also send thank you cards to those leaders. Sometimes when they've had a special ministry, when the women's ministry people have had a special event, send a card to them. It's a big impact because nobody's sending cards anymore. You can do the same thing to the people who help lead out in worship on Sabbath morning in church, or maybe who have led out in a Wednesday evening prayer meeting. Maybe they've been leading across months and you've said thank you verbally, but that card will do a lot more. And one last idea I'd share with you from things we've done is to have some kind of special event during the worship service. Maybe it's the Sabbath, when the children are promoted. You know, at once a year we promote some children from kindergarten into primary. Take that Sabbath to bring the leaders up front and express your gratitude for what they have done. It's a way of saying thanks. We need to remember that Jesus gave us the experiences of the 10 lepers. That story is recorded in Luke to remind us to say thank you.